Hello and welcome, everybody. Welcome to the Atheist Experience. We are up on our upcoming 27th season, and we have yet to be convinced that a God exists. If you can convince us with evidence or an argument that a God exists, call us because the show starts now. And welcome, everybody, to the Atheist Experience. It is April 23rd, 2023. I am your host, Jmike, and with me today is Richard. Richard, we haven't done AXP together, have we?
We've done Talk Heathen, I think.
We've done Talk Heathen, yes. Yeah. Okay, well, joining me for the first time then, Richard, Mr. Gilliver, as I'll call you. How you doing, bud?
I'm good, thank you. We've just been on Talk Heathen with Dr. Ben, no longer students, and we had lots and lots of fun there. We had lots of fun. We had lots of calls, and hoping to get the same again.
Yeah, there was a call I caught while you were on with Dr. Ben now, I should say, and hopefully they will call in. They said they call in to the show and talk about solipsism or something to that effect. I'm not really sure what the call was, but hopefully we'll have them call in. We'll have a lot of calls for you and hopefully some good conversations. But just a reminder that the Atheist Experience is a product of the Atheist Community of Austin, a 501c3 nonprofit organization dedicated to the promotion of atheism, critical thinking, secular humanism, and the separation of religion and government. Before we get into phone calls, we've been doing a kind of share your experience question of the week. And so we've invited you to share your experience based on a question we have for the week. And last week we asked to complete the sentence. It was a real jerk move when God created, and then you fill in the blank. I used urethra fish, which I think are called candiru fish. But yeah, again, maybe not Google that and hit images. But yeah. Before I guess I do the top three, Richard, do you have one? I know I'm probably putting you on the spot, but I'm curious.
Well, from last week, it's
a real jerk move when God created blank.
Humans.
Right,
because he created human beings, and then he decided we weren't good enough and killed us all, apart from a few chosen people. So, why do that to start with? Why not just make us better to begin with, so you don't have to wipe everyone out?
Yeah, but then that would make too much sense. So yeah, there's that.
There is that.
Yeah. Well, so we'll go ahead. We'll give the top three that we had from last week, starting with. And I'm sorry if I don't pronounce the names correctly. I'm pretty terrible at it. I'll probably pass them off to any chance I get to Richard so that he can take care of that. But for now, I'll take the heat. Humberto Quiroga, hopefully I'm saying that right. It was a jerk move for God to create Mondays, which, yes, I'll be saying that tomorrow when I wake up. So I feel you. Number 2 is going to be Seeker of Truth. It was a real jerk move when God created dinosaur fossils and buried them to confuse us. That would be an extremely jerk move. And then for 1, we got Taran Graybeard. God was a real jerk when he created the prostate and said, "Don't touch that." I would put that as my number 1 as well. That's a great one. That's funny. But yeah, so we do have a new question for this week before we get to calls. And so, Richard, if you want to chime in on this one, you can, just to put you on the spot again. But the question for this week will be, name a sin that is so minor that God can't be bothered to punish people for. And so, Richard, if you have anything in mind you want to start with before we get to callers, feel free.
Yeah, I think mixed fabrics, wearing mixed fabrics. There's actually there are actual apologetics for this one, which astounded me when I looked at it. There was the verse in Deuteronomy 22:11. The kind of apologetic around that is that there is no apparent application today for it, because most Christians do not make their own fabric, and the clothing manufacturers do not mix these materials. It's talking about wool and linen. but clothing manufacturers do in fact mix wool and linen. You can buy wool and linen garments. So the apologetics, as usual, are absolute bollocks. As tends to be with apologetics, unfortunately. Yeah, wearing mixed fabrics is certainly something that God doesn't seem to want to punish anyone for, because it's so totally and utterly irrelevant.
Yeah, I've heard. I haven't really had those kind of conversations in a while, but I remember a response was like, it's not like sin, it's like being cleansed or something. I didn't really fully understand it, so I've heard a lot of responses, I guess, that would be maybe not so adequate for you or I. But yeah, we're going to go ahead and move on to calls. And so if you want to leave those, the fill in the blank on that question, or to give your solutions there, then go ahead and put them in the comment section and we will play them next week. We're going to go to Chuck in Hawaii, who wants to discuss his claim that science is a religion. Pronouns are he, him. And welcome on, Chuck. You're on with Richard and Jmike.
Howdy. Yeah, in the Bible, there's a story about a prophet who's running from the Jews, and he's hiding out with some old lady. And he asks her for something to eat, and she's only got just enough flour and oil to make one little loaf. So she makes this little loaf, and now the thing is empty, and there's no more. And so they
Chuck, let me interrupt you a second.
Yeah, we're going.
The last time we spoke, sir, Chuck, the last time we spoke, you called me a liar. So I would like to know, before you jump into your little story here, why we should listen to you in any way whatsoever. Because if anything I say is just going to be assumed to be a lie, what's the point of having the conversation?
I'm not
It's
asking
a good question,
you to say
Chuck.
anything. I was trying to make a statement. You're not going to let me make a statement?
No, I'm asking you outright what the point is, Chuck. Chuck, what is the point of us having a conversation if everything I say you're just going to assume is a lie? Do you think that would make for a productive conversation?
I didn't ask you to say anything. I was making a statement. What is wrong with you guys? Can't you?
Chuck, you have to listen. This is a good point. If you called him a liar, right, and you're gonna have a conversation, there's gonna be a back and forth, and he ends up giving you points, and you're just gonna inevitably say that he's a liar. And I feel like we talked, and you said all British people were liar when we talked, but hopefully I'm not conflating that. I'll give the benefit of the doubt, but I'm not. I mean, do you understand his point? Why it would be almost a waste of time to go through the dialogue if you're just going to inevitably call him a liar? Because I do have other callers and we can get to it, but I just want to make sure you understand the point.
The point is, I called in to talk about a subject, and you're not even letting me finish the sentence.
I will let you finish. I want you to address this point first, because Mike is quite right. It wasn't that you were calling me personally a liar because I am me. You were calling me a liar because I am a British person, and you said all British people are liars. And when Johnny asked you specifically if you thought I was lying, you said yes. So I'd like to have a conversation with you, but I'd like to know that we're going to be having an honest conversation from the outset, where everything I say isn't just going to be immediately dismissed because you're xenophobic and you don't like my nationality. That's what I'd like to establish before we have the conversation. If we can establish that you're going to listen to me and not assume I'm lying, then we will have the conversation.
That sounds fair, right, Chuck? That should be fair. I mean, it's not fair from your position in the first place, but that's fair for him to respond in that way, right?
No, I didn't say anything about the English. I didn't say anything about him. I did not say anybody was a liar. I was simply making a statement for a discussion here, and you can't seem to be.
Yeah, I'm not going to talk to liars. So we'll go to Dave in Wisconsin, who wants to talk about arriving at conclusions regarding the existence of God using science.
Gentlemen, thanks for taking the call. I was really calling to continue a conversation I was having with Dan. He invited me to call back, but I'm curious to understand, just for clarity's sake, how we have conversations in the atheist experience. The objective, as I understand the show, is that theists call in. I'm a theist, and that your position is that it's our obligation to prove the existence of God, not your position to disprove it. Am I wrong on that, or is that kind of the way the show goes?
This depends. I mean, it's going to depend on like who you talk to on the show. I mean, someone like me and hopefully Shannon Q doesn't get mad at me lumping this in there, but I think we have a similar position. We're more of like what you would say a hard atheist. So like I have reasons why I would lean more on the idea that gods do not exist, as opposed to kind of reserving judgment. In that case, yeah, there could be a dialectic where we discuss that, but for some hosts, right, they're not convinced that the proposition is true, and so they want to be convinced. And I'm in a similar boat there. Like I have my view, and if someone wants to discuss why I come to that conclusion, I mean, I'm happy to go through it. It's a pretty lengthy analysis, and it's probably not. And I don't want to bore people on it or anything like that. But I also am in the same boat where I'm not convinced that the Christian God exists or the Muslim God exists. Maybe they do, and so that'd be great to have evidence for that claim. So it really just depends on like the context of the dialogue, which I'm happy to go either way.
Yeah, and I agree, Dave. I agree with Mike that it's. I mean, my personal opinion is that I'm not convinced of any of the propositions I've ever heard, but in the wider scope of things, there is a very legitimate branch of epistemology which states that you make the claim and the claim stands true until it is disproven. So if you're having strictly that conversation in that kind of in that way and in that strict technical sense, then I think there is a case to be made that you can make the claim and then it's the other person's position. It's their burden to show that claim is not true. So I think I'm kind of on Mike on that. I'm happy to go either way. It depends what the conversation entails.
Yeah, and also I need to know like what you mean by God and all that, because like what I think I'm potentially denying might not even be the concept that someone has, right? And so it does kind of help for the theist to establish like what they even mean by God and kind of go from there. And then however you want if you want to ask reasons why I think that thing doesn't exist, I can provide that. But if someone's convinced walking around that they know the fundamental nature of reality as confident as they do, I feel like that they would be the one that would possess the argument or the evidence for that at a higher degree. So, Dave, I don't know if that helps explain.
So, sure. And I understand that just the lady that answered the phone said that when I say something that there's about a 10-second delay. So if there's a period of silence there, I mean, as soon as I hear you stop talking, then I'll respond. So I'm not sure how it works on your end.
Okay. Yeah. There might be a delay. Sorry about that.
That's okay. So I'm a biblical theist, and I do believe in the biblical God, and that Jesus is God, and that he really did rise from the dead as a proof of his statements as to who he was. And I do believe in miracles, and I do believe that there are demons and that they do have power, and and on and on. So I'm pretty much straight line down that road. That's one.
That is a lot of stuff. That is a lot of stuff that we could actually get into. So which kind of aspect of that do you want to talk about? Because there's so much there we could talk about. Yeah. Obviously we haven't got hours to discuss the whole thing. So which of those things do you think is the kind of strongest thing for the kind of?
I was not I'm not because I'm in the car and I'm not in front of the screen, so I don't know which gentleman I'm speaking to. But the last one that had spoken to me said you didn't know what my position was. So I was simply clarifying my position and who I was. I wasn't trying to pick a topic. I was just
Okay, that's fine.
and what I believe.
Sure. So it says that
that-
you. Oh, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
The other thing about the show is that depending on who I'm talking to, I don't know some of the guys that I've spoken to in the past. There's nothing that will ever convince them. So the objective is not to convince one of the hosts.
We are all individuals.
That God exists.
We're all individuals, but we have something in common that none of us in the 27 seasons we've done have been convinced by arguments that have been presented on the show. We might have different levels. I mean, someone on here might not be a naturalist. They might be a non-naturalist, but an atheist. I have no idea. But you know, it's going to depend, because I'm not Kenneth and I'm not Shannon Q. Someone could call up and they could ask why do you think God doesn't exist? And that might not be their position. The way they take atheism is, look, I'm just not convinced in the proposition God exists. And you're going to have to deal with it from that point. And then, you know, someone like me might be leaning a lot heavier on that side. Well, I'm getting confident to say that I think that proposition is more likely true than false, and I can give my reasons. But my thing is that none of us have shut the door off. The thing is always open, and presumably the theist has like had a life-changing event, right? Especially if you're a Christian or you're a Muslim, and this is something like way more embedded as a view or as a worldview, and you operate your daily life around it. And it's way different than, you know, I think me or Richard, who we're tentative. We can come off the position. We're skeptics. We'd be happy to, but that's going to involve someone providing some type of evidence or providing an argument, because I haven't seen those that make me go, I have to believe, I'm rationally committed to God existing. And if that's true, that'd be great. I'd want to know that. So,
okay. So you're helping to resolve my questions about the show and so on. So it depends on who the host is and who I'm talking to. From a sense of an argument, I and you correct me if I'm wrong, I don't believe that the scientific method can apply to either proving or disproving the existence of God. I think that science, being, you know, a study of through natural, you know, phenomenon, the universe as it is and so on, and I don't think that you can prove God from the scientific method. That doesn't even compute to me.
Well, don't worry about proving. Let's go something with like a little lesser. Like, what about raising the probability that it could be true? Right. I'm not interested in my views of being like convinced, right? Because sure, someone could we could talk with that guy later, and he'd be like, "How do you know you're not a brain in a vat?" And it's like, well, I mean, I'm not absolutely certain about that. I guess I could wake up tomorrow and find out the whole thing's been a dream, and that's totally a possibility. But I want to talk about what things we have good reason to think is true, or what raises the likelihood that it's true. And from yeah, and so for me, at least, I want to at least try to be as humble as I can and say, I don't need you to prove God. I need good reasons or an argument that, you know, it's more probable than naturalism. I don't know. Maybe you have something like that, but I'm open to all of them. And it doesn't have to be proof. It can just be, hey, I think this is reasonable to assess that this is more likely than its negation. I just haven't seen that.
Okay.
I would say regarding the kind of the scientific thing that I think it depends on the claim, because if I think in general, it would be correct to say that we can't prove a supernatural entity using our current scientific methods. However, if the claim is that entity is interacting with the physical world, we should be able to take that point of interaction and test that and see if there's some anomaly happening there. Even if it doesn't lead us to the supernatural entity, it should show us an anomaly which we can investigate further
and have predictive expectation for. And I'm absolutely in agreement with Richard there. And because, look, let's say it doesn't have to be the scientific method. Maybe it's not testable in your view. I'm going to go one step lower, because I'm trying to just to see where we can stack up more things into the criteria. But let's start at novel predictions. Do you have predictive expectation or predictive success on the hypothesis? And if you do, that's great. Like my ears perk up a little bit, right? And that would kind of go hand in hand with what Richard's saying, is that if you have, hey, I think God is part of, I don't know, the distribution of allele frequencies or whatever, and some intelligent design kind of notion. If you have that, then presumably we could make predictions off the hypothesis, and we could get success off those predictions. And that's a really good reason to think that your hypothesis is working or your model is working. And so, yeah, I think that we have options for that. I think that there's ways that you could take those principles and use them. It just seems that like what we're doing is sidestepping like an extremely rigorous process, or at least components of those. And that's just not as interesting to me. It's like, okay, well, if you have something else, I mean, just, I don't know, offer that, but
I don't think
it's not really my problem, you know?
Yeah, I'm not, I'm always waiting for a pause for me to interject. So I don't like talking over people. So I'm just.
Oh yeah, that's okay. Yeah.
I'm just waiting for you to finish. As soon as I hear you pause for a few seconds, then I'll talk. But until you stop talking.
I'll say it over. I'll say it over, Dave. I'll say it over just to help out. But yeah, anything you want to add? I mean, I don't know. I kind of want to move on to other callers, or maybe if you have reasons to believe, we can get into a more, I don't know, in-depth conversation there on that. But if not, I don't know, Richard, if you want to say anything. But yeah.
Yeah, I'd be interested in kind of investigating some of the reasons that you believe, if you want to do that. But you know, if you were just calling, as Mike said, about just having that conversation about science, then, you know, give us a call back for some of the reasons another time. But I'm happy to go into one or two of them now if you want to do that.
No, and again, I just haven't had a chance to even make a statement in that regard. But from understanding if God exists, I don't believe that the scientific method is a way to do it. I can't set up something that is testable that might happen in the future, other than maybe his return. We can talk about it, but that's based on historical events. What I would be looking at is that to talk about to convince me whether God exists or not, the only way I can do it is kind of a missing body, dead body approach from an investigative standpoint, from the same way that they would do a cold case and prove somebody guilty for murder. You can only do it on circumstantial evidence, and that's about the only way I can approach it. And quite frankly, why I believe God does exist, and that all the things that I said I believe in. Just by lining up a whole lot of stuff historically and then sizing up and saying, what's the probability? Okay, verdict, I'm guilty. I believe that God exists because of the lining up of a lot of historical information, and saying, yeah, what's the probability that he doesn't exist? I guess I believe that he does exist. So we can't, I don't think we can get into it today. I just wanted to first call in and at least I now understand that I will never have a conversation with the Atheist Experience trying to prove something that's testable. The only thing I can do is do it circumstantially, and then come to a conclusion based on circumstantial evidence. That's it.
Dave, just before we let you go, and I appreciate that, and you know, you've been very cordial, and I appreciate that as well. And you know, I'd love to have that conversation about that historical evidence, you know, one of the times you call in the future. But just before you go, what do you think about what we've said about that point where the supernatural entity interacts with the world? Do you agree that we should be able to investigate that point using the scientific method and at least find an anomaly there?
All right. Okay. All right. This may seem a little weird to you guys, but fortunately or unfortunately, depending on your point of view, my family lineage goes back generations in being involved in satanic worship. My generation, specifically being, well, me, I guess, I broke the chain.
To me, Dave, that's like saying, but Dave, you got to understand, to us, it's like saying, in my family, we had people that worshipped like Garfield or something. Like it's fake and fiction to us, so it doesn't really matter in that sense.
Yeah, well, the problem with it, guys, is that it involves the interaction with demonic beings where they actually get physically involved. and that is testable. And I'll tell you what, that's a road down which.
So why haven't we seen that?
I mean, I can tell you about it, and you can get involved in it. But I would seriously and highly would not recommend it because.
But you don't need to tell us about it and us to get involved, because those instances of that happening have been investigated. And as far as I know, there's never been one scientific conclusion which has stated that they are supernatural events.
No,
yeah, and Dave,
I'm not saying. I don't know what stories you've been told or what events that you've been talked about. I can
this
certainly
would be
talk
front
about
news
and other people, and you could in it, but I'm telling you, you don't want to do that.
Yeah,
but that warning is it's kind of the complete nothing burger to us.
Yeah, it's very vacuous.
That's like saying, if you're not very good, you're going to go to hell when you die, and it just means nothing. It's not it's not the thing you think it is to us. If there's a chance, if there's a chance that there is something happening here that could provide evidence and could be used, could be investigated using the scientific method, that's the first place we want to go, not somewhere we want to stay away from.
Well, I'm just saying, my personal recommendation is that you don't go down that road. But if you're talking about testability, that you personally, each of you guys individually would want to know about, that's a road you could go down, and believe me, it's testable through your own experience.
Dave, that wasn't the question I asked. Dave, the question I asked you was relating to the scientific method testing these interactions of the supernatural realm interacting with our realm, and could the scientific method that we have be used to detect an anomaly there? That was the question I asked you about. It's not about my personal how I personally feel, my personal me having a go at that thing, doing tarot cards or whatever it is you want. It's about using the scientific method to test that and find an anomaly.
Yeah, Dave, he has nothing to do with this view of what he goes down. I mean, it's weird because you're talking like at kind of two sides of your mouth in one sense, where you're like, well, it's not testable, but then here's this thing that's testable, but I warn you not to go down that route. I mean, that's what I feel like I'm talking to a snake oil salesman in a sense. Like, I don't think that you're, I don't think like, you know what I mean? It's not like I think you're dishonest. I think you genuinely believe this. So I don't think it's analogous in the sense that you're trying to sell me something that you think is bullshit to make a buck, but that's how it feels to me. And then when someone kind of throws well, you're going to experience this. Well, it's like me. It's literally like me just saying you'll feel the wrath of Forrest's, closet monster Roland after you die. It just wouldn't. You would be like, wait, what? Like you'd walk away and be like, that guy is kind of strange. And that's how it kind of comes off for us. But real quick, before I, just real quick, because we got to move on to other callers. I just want to point out that it does. Well, I'll let you go. It's just
happens
what
if
I want.
You talk too much. I never have a chance to really respond because you talk a long time.
Yeah, I waited that entire time. Dave,
show right now and watch the time meter. You talk.
All right, Dave. We're gonna let you go, bud. I sat there that whole time. If you watch the clip back and waited, and then I didn't even get the point in, and then you got upset. So just watch that clip back over. We're gonna first, before we go to callers, I want to point out that you can support the ACA if you like what we do and you want to support us. And the ways that you can do that are becoming a member, and you can do that for as little as 99 cents a month. You just click the join button below the video, and this will give you access to special chat emojis that you can flex on other people in the comments or in the live chat. And you can also send a super chat with a question or a comment, which will be read live during the show. And I think we have a couple of those. I don't know, Richard, if you want to. Of course, the reason why I wanted you to read them is because I saw you trying to pass them off on, you're like, I can't pronounce this. So I was like, I'm going to do the same thing and dodge it. But then I look at the names and they're easy to pronounce. So it backfired on me. But go ahead, Richard.
Tough call.
Yeah.
Top Cat 2069 sends $5. It says, I'm 71, gay, Never had a religion. Love these shows. Thank you very much, Top Cat. And Native Atheist member has been a member for 6 months. He's sent $10 and says, I love these too. Thank you very, very much, Native Atheist. Really appreciate that.
Yes, we do. We do appreciate that. And if you want to support us, that is one way to support us, and we will read them or answer your comments during or questions during the show. If I can learn English today, it'd be great. We're going to go ahead with Felix in Florida. Pronouns are he, him. I feel like I'm already going to be confused, but the nation of Israel proves the existence of God. All right. I didn't know that. How does that work out, Felix? Fill in the blanks for me.
Hello. Yes. Yeah. So the nation of Israel, God spoke to that nation, and then He promised them that they will be restored from exile. It's been almost 2,000 years, but as soon as after the Holocaust happened, they became a nation officially recognized by the Soviet Union and America in the 50s. So that's a huge, the two world's biggest superpowers. So they're actually a nation. And the scripture says in Amos chapter 9, verse 15, I will bring my people Israel back from exile. They will rebuild the ruined cities, and I live in them. They will plant vineyards and drink their wine. They will make gardens and eat their fruit. I will plant Israel in their own land, never again to be uprooted from the land I have given them, says the Lord your God.
Yeah, this sounds really like, even if I just granted everything just to give all the toys to play with, I don't see how this is like a novel prediction for a celestial being. I don't get it. It doesn't make any sense to me. How is this? How would this be convincing even if we just granted it to you? I really don't get how this is. You must bow down. God now exists. I'm not feeling that even if I was to grant it.
Well, if you don't want to worship God, that's.
No, I'm saying I don't. I'm saying it's a non. It just seems like a non sequitur. I don't even get it. Like, how is this significant that a God exists? Some book says a thing, something occurs. Great. I think it's the Bhagavad Gita says that the universe is 4.3 billion years old. Hindus got that right, but you get lucky guesses sometimes. That's why I'm willing to grant it, even if it's not true. Just because I don't get how this adds any weight to God. I don't get it.
It's a miraculous event because these people were supposed to be exterminated over and over again. And
why is it miraculous, Felix? If
the thing that happens all the time, and
if we take the actual claim, which is that the nation of Israel proves the existence of God, why does the nation of Israel being recognized prove the existence of God? That is the claim. So why is that miraculous? Is it not possible that a people could be displaced and then come back together and that nation be recognized without the intervention of God?
It's possible, but the way it happened,
right? So in that way, for that very reason, it is not proof of the existence of God. You've debunked your own argument, sir.
It's underdetermined by this other view that Richard just pointed out, which is that the thing that you agree is also possible. And so now you're going to have to add more to that. That's why I said at the beginning, this isn't none of this on its own. Even if I granted it does anything, it's I really don't understand how this would be convincing to somebody.
It proves a miracle. It was an absolute miracle.
It's not a miracle. You just admitted that it could happen without the aid of. You literally Richard did something beautiful, and he got you to admit that it's possible without the aid of this divine thing, meaning that it's not a miracle event because you accept that by definition it is an event that could occur without such a miracle event. So if you want to contradict yourself, you can, or you can just take that back.
Okay, I'll clarify. I accepted that it's possible that a nation could come back.
Then it's not a miraculous event.
Come back and become a nation. But I'm saying that the way this one happened was a miraculous event. So I was partially agreeing with Richard.
What in the methodology? What in the methodology of it coming back together, of Israel coming back, shows that it's specifically a miracle event?
Yeah, they were outnumbered by a lot, by the hundreds of thousands. Nations wanted destroyed. Several nations have tried to commit genocide on it. They've been disbanded multiple times throughout thousands of years. No civilization has survived all of this. It's not possible. It
clearly is possible because it's happened, sir. It has happened, and just because people are not thousands of nations have wanted them destroyed, that's a wild over exaggeration. But even if we said every single nation on the planet wanted Israel destroyed, and they survived it, and they came back, and then some superpowers recognized them as a nation once more, that is still not evidence of a miracle. At best, you could say it's evidence of what's called a mathematical miracle.
Yeah,
it's not evidence of a supernatural miracle.
Yeah, because it sounds like we can make this simple. Like maybe this isn't directly analogous, but it sounds like I'm taking a bunch of blue marbles out of a bag, and I do that like a billion times, and then you get to the one kind of like red marble that comes out, and you're like, it's a miracle. No, it's potentially just a statistical improbability. And if you know anything about like inferential statistics, you know it's gonna eventually happen, right? At some point. That's why it's a possibility. I don't see it, even if we granted and we gave you all those toys, how that's supposed to be indicative of a miracle, because that's just the way the natural world works. We have things that can occur that aren't as likely to occur as other things. And I just don't see how that has to be aided by some one. I'm not even convinced that this is fleshed out well enough. But two, even if I was just to grant that, I don't see how, therefore, God, right? Because it could just be, like you said, the fact that it occurs the way that the natural progression of civilization works, and then that ends up restoring some independence, right? I don't know, say Maccabean revolt happens, doesn't mean God exists. I don't get it. I don't get it.
If the dinosaurs survived the meteor attack and they were supposed to be wiped out, that would be a miracle. That's sort of what happened.
No, some dinosaurs did survive the immediate meteor attack. That's why we have birds.
Yeah, I was going to say dinosaurs still technically exist.
So it wasn't a miracle. It's just that some smaller creatures weren't as affected by the damage caused. There's nothing miraculous about it. Again, unless we're talking mathematical miracles. And if your whole argument is that what are called mathematical miracles occur, I absolutely agree. It's part of the thing of very large numbers. The thing is a technical term, by the way. It's part of the law of very large numbers that mathematical miracles occur at the rate of 1 in a million. So I agree. If we're talking mathematical miracles, if we're talking improbable events, I absolutely agree with you. If we're talking specifically supernatural events, then you have much, much more work to do than you're currently doing.
And Felix, are you using like a historical based? Sorry, go ahead, Felix. Sorry.
No, it's okay. Do you guys agree that the Soviet Union is completely atheist? They hate God. They don't even believe God exists. And them recognizing a small little pocket, like, why would they do that?
No, that's not true. That's not true. The Soviet Union isn't completely atheist.
Yeah, and I don't hold on. I feel like we're getting off. I want to stick on what your reasons were on the whole Soviet. That threw my brain off for a loop. I have to scramble it back now. If you take you're taking a historical notion on this, right? Because presumably you're looking to history, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And so,
in history.
Yeah, and so, but you're talking about these miraculous events that occur, or at least they're kind of embedded within history that you know of by reading some book. The problem is this is what I explained on the show I think it was last week, where you're using a method where we're trying to determine what's most likely the case, what's most probable. And the thing that you want to say is the most probable is this type of miraculous event, but it necessarily sits outside the scope, right? Because you're talking about something that by definition is an improbable event, right? Like extremely improbable. That's what makes a miracle have its significance. And I don't get how you're concluding that it's the most probable when by definition it's not the most probable. And so it just seems like, I don't know, the methodology you're using for this in the first place seems a little skewed to me, because it's not even in that parameter, right? You're talking about something that's trying to determine what's most likely probable, and you're deciding the thing that's by definition not likely probable is the most probable. Do you see my concern?
Yeah, if you're only looking at history, but I'm also looking at supernatural writings, and so what happened in history is confirming what the supernatural says. Like, it's a falsifiable claim that has been verified. Instead of being falsified, it's actually verified. The prophecies of Israel, of them becoming a nation, them surviving, the remnant. I will gather my people from the four winds of the earth. They've come from all over the world. So that's one. I'm using two methodologies: inspired scripture and history.
Felix, what would you consider a miracle to be? If you could give us a definition of a miracle, what would that be?
Something that is impossible. Something that would be impossible, knowing natural law. Like, if I saw a dinosaur today, that would be a miracle. But because they went extinct, Israel was supposed to go extinct. So
No,
natural.
No, because we could look, a dinosaur could just pop out of some woods and be like, oh, I don't know, it's probably not going to happen, but that's not like what's being expressed by that. That'd be like I feel like a type of black swan fallacy. It's not gonna be a miracle. I mean, it'd be a miracle in the way that we use the term, like just kind of shorthand, but we wouldn't really mean, I think, what you mean by a miracle, like a divine interaction.
Yeah, there's a creature in Africa which is called the Milan Tuga, which is it's a mythical creature, but it's said to resemble a triceratops, and a lot of people think that it is a living dinosaur, which just hasn't been found. Now, that's not to say that it is the case, but it certainly wouldn't be a miracle if it turned out to be the case.
Okay, so I have a question for you guys then. How did they survive if so many nations hate it? And why does every nation on the planet pretty much hate it if they don't even believe in God? Like,
why does every nation on the planet? I don't get this argument.
Yeah, I'm not understanding this.
I don't see every nation in the planet hating the Jewish people and the nation of Israel.
Yeah, and
the British actively fought to get it back, so it certainly doesn't seem like a hatred to me.
Yeah, and I guess
anti-Semitism. Why is there anti-Semitism throughout history? It's because the enemy is trying to persecute God's people.
Because people are garbage. Because people are trash, and they have beliefs, and that informs their actions and the way that they do things. They don't have good critical thinking skills, and that's why we do a show what we do now. So we don't have people that are like that care about their fellow humans, right? That's the whole kind of this whole thing. People suck. That's why we do a show. If people didn't suck so bad, we probably wouldn't do a show talking about beliefs that we think inform actions, that inform people to not go get vaccinated and then stand around me at the store, right? So, yeah, people have beliefs and they suck. But I don't know. We got a lot of calls stacking up. I'm just want to be clear and concise where we at in the dialectic, and I feel like the criticism that we're offering to you is you haven't really shown anything that would exclude other possibilities. And you seem to just admit to that openly. So your hypothesis just seems to be underdetermined. But then also you have a methodology issue. You're trying to use miracles in a place where they don't really belong. It's just not how historians do history. And so to just start with it being a miracle event or a divine thing in history to begin with, you've already kind of, in my opinion, shot yourself in the foot if you're trying to use that methodology, because you're using it incorrectly. But that's all I'll say there. Richard, Felix, I don't know, before we move on callers, I want to make sure that you guys say your piece.
Yeah, I have nothing to add, Felix.
Okay. Well, thanks, guys. You guys are pretty polite. I thought you guys would come down on me, like, angry.
Oh, no. I mean, hey, I'm sure I'd be happy to hang out with probably, like, a lot of the cool callers that we disagree with beliefs on, and talk about this. It's just about the beliefs, and hopefully it doesn't inform your actions in the way that, I would think is wrong. But yeah, no, we just want to talk about ideas.
I just grew up hearing, atheists are kind of like the children of the devil, and it's kind of, I don't know, like most atheists I meet are pretty cool. So thanks, guys.
Yeah. You know what you should do, Felix? That should be a lesson for you in terms of like, I don't know you, so don't take this the wrong way, but the people telling you these things, there's probably a reason that they're telling you those things. And the best thing you can do is, I have my own mind. I can look at other people's opinions or how they think about things critically, and I can develop a way to protect myself so I don't get scammed by, NFT scams or crypto scams or whatever, snake oil salesmen. And then you once you go out and you do that, you like, wow, I'm using my own set of tools, and I'm realizing that people were lying to me, and that atheists are not. There are some bad bunches, obviously, in all groups, but you'll see that you would have been better off just kind of developing those skills on your own and not listening to those people who don't want you to stray away from the crowd because they need you. But anyway, thank you, Felix.
Sounds good. Goodbye.
All right. And so before we get into another call, we have merch, and you can get that merch if you so desire at tiny.cc/merch ACA for your AXP t-shirts, mugs, hoodies, and even our limited edition t-shirts. This month, I prayed to Joe. Sorry, I almost said Pesci. I prayed to Joe Pesci because he looks like a guy that can get things done, George Carlin. So you can visit tiny.cc/merch ACA to pick up your goods there, and we appreciate it very much. And finally, want to send a shout out to the crew. Puts it on, and we might be a little early on the crew cam, but let's just go ahead and put them up because they make it possible, and they make us look all nice and dandy. And also we have podcasts that you can go check out at visit tiny.cc. I'm sorry, visit tiny.cc/AEN podcast. And that houses all of our ACA shows in audio podcast form. There you can listen to all the shows from the Atheist Experience, Talk Heathen, Truth Wanted, the Nonprofits, and I would say preface the Nonprofits being the flagship show. And you can also support us on Patreon at tiny.cc/Patreon AXP. All right. Let's get to some more callers. Let's go with do you have call in studio open? Do you want to? Yeah.
Let's go with 7. Quite like the look of 7.
All right. Yep. Go back to the cross. I'm not going to call you that. I'm going to just call you G, I guess. How you doing?
I'm doing all right. How about you guys?
I'm doing good.
It's a sunny day here in sunny California, of course. But I guess I wanted to talk to you guys about, God, of course. And I want to talk to you guys about kind of proofs that, God exists. There is God. So I want to first ask you, do you believe that there may be forces that control, the universe, like forces of nature, if you will?
No.
It seems a weird way of phrasing it. I think there are forces of nature. I don't think there are forces of nature that control the universe.
Yeah.
I think there are forces of nature which are descriptive of how the universe works.
Exactly.
All right. So I want to try to introduce one that is, in essence, one that controls the universe. One would be time. If I might ask, can you touch time? Is time tangible? Can you touch time?
I feel like you're reading from a script here, and I'd rather you not do that. I'd rather you just have an actual conversation with us.
I'm not reading from a script. I'm just asking you questions because, first.
Well, yeah, but asking us questions
and have a dialogue.
Yeah, and I'm happy to do that. But if you're giving an argument about if it's for me to like affirm a proposition in the argument or something, or a premise, then I understand why it's being phrased in a question, because it's like, oh, you're just trying to get me to affirm the premise and then go down. I don't have an issue with that. But you're asking me questions that have nothing to do with the success of your argument, like whether I think I can touch time. I'm not understanding. Like you should just give the reasons, because I don't. My worldview could just be totally confused. I don't know how that would make any. How your argument all of a sudden matters about what I think, right?
All right. So let me try to explain it.
But do you understand what I'm saying? That I could just be totally confused, and your argument would be successful regardless, right, of how I am?
Yes.
Yeah, it's like saying, hey, my TV works, but let's check your TV first. I'd be like, why? Like, I'll just grant my TV's broken. You're the one saying yours works. Let's just look at your TV. So yeah. Anyway, sorry.
Well, I'm trying to explain that time is something that exists in our world. Time is something that governs the universe. We can measure time, but we can't touch it. We have numbers and symbols for time, but at the same time, you can't exactly. It's not tangible. It's not something that. It's not something.
What do you mean by govern the universe?
What
do you mean by govern the universe? Because space, there is space time. Not the time isn't a separate entity, which kind of makes sure the universe is ticking along nicely. It is part of space. It is there is space time, and the universe is it's a descriptor of how the universe works.
Well, I'm trying to explain
and to answer you directly, it would be physical, right? It would be woven into the fabric of space, and so it would be physical. But it's not.
But what I'm saying is, when I say physical, I mean something that's you can touch it, you can taste it, you can hear it, see it. You can't exactly do that with time.
Yeah, but not all objects, not all physical objects work. That's not how everything works in the universe. Like, there's going to be things that are macroscopic that I can touch, obviously. There's other things that I don't even know if I'm tasting certain like atoms right now, right? Like, I don't really, if it's physical, it's physical. It doesn't depend on our ability to touch it or our senses, like being able to do one thing with it that we can't on the other. I'm not getting that.
I mean, we could even go further and shift the physical out of it altogether and talk about concepts like numbers, which are descriptive of the way the universe works. They're not physical, but I don't think either myself or Mike would say that they don't exist.
I'm trying to say that time, much like numbers, they have like symbols, but they're not physical. They're not something that's tangible. You can't go out and touch a number, or you can't go out and, see time, but you can see the effect.
It doesn't have to be physical.
I can't touch a dream either.
I can feel a song coming on.
But you do see it. You do.
Sure.
You can see these things.
See the effects of it.
Space, for instance. There is, you can't exactly touch space, but you can feel it. There are things that are beyond that we can't see. Another thing, light.
I'm just curious, what's the entailment? There's things that you think we can't touch that are probably not like physical, or maybe they are. Like, what's the entailment? I'm like, I don't want to get bogged down, so like maybe we can come back to that to make sure we understand. But I'm not even understanding how this is getting to God in the first place.
Well, the point is, there are things that we can't. There are certain things that we cannot see. There are certain things that are intangible, but they do exist. We can, There are symbols, numbers. There are things in the world that
Yep, we don't see stellar nucleosynthesis happen, but we know it happens. There's lots of stuff like that in science.
Yeah, so we agree on that point. So let's move on from that point and move to the next stage of your argument, because we all agree that there are things that we can't see that exist.
Indirect observations are a really good thing in science.
Yes. Now, take that same principle and put it with God. God is, in essence, you can't exactly tangibly see. Or
so he's
hear,
equivalent to nothing.
But, well, go back to.
I feel like I'm being
like
described
time.
the same things that nothing would be like attempted to be described as. Or better yet, you're talking about numbers. If they're not real and they're just conceptual in my head, then that makes sense too. I think gods are concepts in people's heads.
Well, I wouldn't exactly say that. I'd say that, in essence, that much like numbers, much like space, much like time, these things exist, but they are beyond our senses.
The thing is with numbers and
here,
Mr. Cross, Mr. Cross,
yep.
Mr. GBTT Cross,
Mr. Cross, and
we agree that numbers and time and space exist, and they are tangible. They're either descriptors of the way the world works, or the tangible things that can be measured. But this doesn't appear to be the case for God. So you need to kind of go a little bit further than just making the comparison, because the comparison isn't equivalent. So we can say I can demonstrate numbers exist really easily by holding 2 pens up and saying 1 and 2. That is a descriptor of those 2 items. So what are you doing? How are you doing that with God? How are you doing that with God? How are you demonstrating the existence even though it is intangible?
Because I'm trying to explain that there are certain forces in the universe that govern the way the world works. There's time.
That's
space,
the claim.
There's numbers.
That's the equivalence that you're trying to compare God to. But how do we show that God exists in the same way that those things do?
Yeah, so like Richard did a good example. He put up the 2 pens. You said, well, those are only like 2 objects, and you're kind of having an abstraction from those. Yes, he might be a nominalist, right? Someone who doesn't think that numbers are like these real things, but you take 2 pens and then you can have an abstract kind of idea, right? That there's 2 here. And it's not like you go get me the 2. It's that they're going to have a referent. The 2 will have some type of referent when applied to the universe, applied to, I don't know, like a diameter of something, right? It's going to have a referent. And so he's going to have a full enclosed view on numbers there. And if you could show that there's two ways to go about this. One, his view is more parsimonious because he doesn't have to have this foreign thing like numbers or floating abstract concepts. So he's explained the data as we can use this concept of 2 to refer to these things in the world. And his view is going to win because he doesn't have to appeal to all this kind of strange stuff. Or, right, if we don't do just this kind of worldview comparison and show that Richard's view is probably the simpler view you should go with, then it seems that the only other option is for you to do what Richard's asking you to do, which is like the 2 pens and showing how that concept is anything similar to like how we do with time, with clocks, or how we do with pens and numbers by holding multiple of them up. If you can't show a demonstration similar to that, then that sounds like bad, like not a good starting point, that you can't do something as simple as here's like a representation of 1 and here's representation of 2, like Richard did. Do you see what I'm saying in terms of this kind of comparison? It just seems like you're adding a lot of stuff to your worldview that's unnecessary, right? A governing body.
Well, I would ask, where do these things come from then? Time, space.
Yeah, so here's an option. There was just an initial state, had to exist, like God. You know, we asked, why did God exist? Well, because he had to exist. He couldn't have not existed. Well, here's an alternative view. Here's just a possible view for you to think about. There's an initial state. It's the first moment of time, right? So if you put it on like a timeline, be t equals 0. There's nothing prior to that, so it doesn't come from nothing because there isn't anything prior to t equals 0. So it doesn't come from anything like a God, and it doesn't come from nothing. It just exists necessarily, the same way that God is the initial item in the theist view. But I don't have to have this extra baggage of this foreign entity with desires and intentions that creates the initial state. I've explained everything I've explained why is there something rather than nothing without any extra appeal, right? Because we did the same move. Someone posits God, why is there something rather than nothing? But then they have an extra step. Well, God creates the universe. Let's just shave that part off, right? There's an initial state of the universe, and that's the first moment of time. The first premise of the Kalam is false because the universe doesn't have a cause, but it begins to exist. I think I have a decent view to go with, and that's just a comparison. It's not to say it's true. It's just to say that view seems to be winning because I'm not appealing to all this extra stuff. Like God's just this idle wheel that has no explanatory advantage. Like, why would I put it into the theory? Why not add 7 gods or 20 gods, right? If we're just going to add an idle wheel to our theory, let's just like pack that shit up with so many gods because that's like what we're doing, just bloatware, right? So I don't know. That's why I don't really understand your view. You're just packing all this stuff into your hypothesis that seems unnecessary.
Well, the first thing, if there's more than one God, then there's competition. God is basically above, well, all things. Another thing I would say is that everything that has existed has a beginning. Now, you say that, the universe came from zero, but
no,
you're not considering.
No, didn't come from anything. Steelman my view properly. Well, it didn't come from anything.
How do you get nothing from something?
There's no nothing. Like I said, listen to what I said. It's the first
somewhere.
Yeah, okay, God had to come from somewhere, right? There's nothing, right? This is what I'm saying. This move is
the very definition of God is that God is
Yeah, I'm gonna mute you for just a second so you can listen. God is metaphysically necessary. I mean, I'm sure people watching the show are familiar with have you heard this contingency argument that gets me to a necessary being? Yeah, well, I mean, so the whole point about what they want to say is that there's this necessary being that exists in all worlds. Why does something have to exist at all? Well, because God had to exist, right? There's no nothing prior to God, and that's not a problem for the theist. All I'm doing is taking the same thing. I'm just saying, look, there's an initial state of natural reality. It's the first moment, so it doesn't go back infinite into the past. But that first moment exists of necessity. It had to exist. In all possible worlds we could think of, that's the first point for any possible world that could diverge any way that it would want to go. And that is the same type of explanation. It has a beginning because on the timeline, there's no earlier moment in the timeline, right? So it has a beginning, but it has no cause. It doesn't come from anything. There's no contradiction in the view, unless you could show that. And that's all I'm trying to say is that's a potential view. That's a view that shows that the first premise of the Kalam is false. And it shows that there's a lot of baggage on the theist view because they also think that there's an initial state of natural reality. They think God caused it. I'm just shaving that off and then putting the necessity part onto the naturalist view. They can do it. I can do it.
It gets even more difficult for the theist because the fact is that view that you've just talked about is in fact backed up by evidence. We have empirical evidence that this universe does exist. So we can say that we know that this universe exists. We don't know for certain the initial state. It might be a necessary thing. It might not. We don't know.
It could just go forever into the past or something.
But we have that evidence that shows that this does in fact exist and there was that initial state. That we don't have that for God. So we've got two comparative worldviews here. One is backed up by evidence, and the other one has nothing. So they're not even on equal merit to begin with. Even if you say that, they could both be necessary. They could both be necessary beings. They could both be necessary in all possible worlds. You're still left with one huge problem. That is that there is nothing supporting that other worldview whatsoever. Cross, how would you respond to that?
How would I respond to that? Guess I need to think about that.
That's fine. That's absolutely
that's a good
fine.
answer.
Yeah, it is a good answer. And I suggest you do. And, you know, you've brought what you thought was a good argument, and you've been sincere. And, you know, that really, really do appreciate that. You've been sincere, and you've brought what you thought was a good argument, but it doesn't really stand up to any kind of good scrutiny. And, you know, while you take this away, one thing I'd kind of suggest you do, which might seem a bit left field to you, is actually have a look at some of the cosmology around the beginning of the universe. Because I think you've got some things that I don't know whether you've been kind of listening to apologists or your pastor or, you know, being informed by some kind of Christian worldview here that may be telling you things about the initial states of the universe which aren't true, because nobody thinks it came from nothing, an absolute nothingness. And I think doing some investigation into that might be a good idea. And I mean, even if you have a look at some kind of cosmologists' books on the subject which state nothing, you know, there's one called A Universe from Nothing. The author goes to great lengths to explain in that book that it doesn't actually mean nothing as we would understand it in a normative sense. So it's worth looking into, because it might give you a little bit of insight into this.
Yeah, and all I was trying to do, Cross, on the rivaling of view, the whole point is that you have this view, we agree there's God creates an initial state, or there's an initial state of the universe that begins to exist or whatever. All I'm doing is saying, okay, let's see if we can explain all the data with less, right? Do we need this extra stuff? And what I'm doing is just showing that God seems to be an idle wheel, because I can do the same move that the theist does and just say there has to be something that exists, and it be that initial state of reality. It's not monopolized by theists, right? That would be unfair. We both can appeal to necessity, meaning that it had to exist and it couldn't have not existed. But if that's available to God, it's equally available for the naturalist or the atheist. And so all I'm doing is saying, well, here's a potential view. That view is simpler and it explains all the data. That's the view we should go with. We should do a comparison on all these views, because I don't think we can come to the truth of metaphysical truths. I don't think we're going to do that. This is like our best option that we can do, is compare theoretical virtues and see which one fares better, right? That's why I also don't think I'm a brain in a vat, because I think that's like a cost that has more cost to adding more stuff to the view. But anyway, Cross, do you have anything you want to say before we move on? I want to get to some other callers. Or if you feel like we didn't represent you correctly, then yeah.
No. Well, do you mind if I at least tell you guys the gospel, or have you guys heard it already?
I've heard it a lot.
My academic field of study is really just studies. I've done a little bit of that.
We're really into like textual criticism, or like the nerdy type of stuff with scholarship. So we're very familiar. We may not be good at it, but we're familiar.
All right. Well, then, I suppose, thank you guys for your time, and
thank you.
Hope that you guys, have a change of mind. May Jesus bless you guys.
All right. Well, have a good one.
Yeah, I appreciate that call. I appreciate the caller on that, because he was at least sincere and honest. And I hope he does go away and have a kind of think about it and come back and give us another call.
Yeah, I don't want to overload it, but it was like, if you have this argument, like the thing that I'm thinking of usually is, well, it seems that we could rival this view with a naturalistic view and shave a lot of that stuff off. And if we can do that successfully and it explains all the data, then all it's pointing out is the stuff you're adding is an idle wheel and it doesn't have explanatory advantage. So like, why use it? But I hopefully I explain that in a digestible way. But yeah, anyway, let's before we go to actually no, let's go ahead and take another call. We got some time. I wanted to check time, and we are good. Richard, you're on a roll, so why don't you pick?
Let's just let's go with 8. Let's go down the list and talk to RJ.
All right,
RJ in Colorado.
Hello?
How you doing?
Hello?
Says that you're wondering.
Thanks for asking.
It says you're wondering why we only have 8 billion people if humans have only been around for 400,000 years.
Yeah.
I don't know I can help you much with this. Maybe Richard has a better answer. I mean, I have like
yeah,
anyway, yeah.
I think the basic, very, very basic thing is that, you know, until very, very recently, we've had a history full of dying very, very young.
Yep, high infant mortality.
We've had a history of wars. We've had almost as, in fact, I said this very often, that as, in the Neolithic period, when humans first started developing organized religion, was the exact same time that we started developing warfare, which to me just seems a little bit too much of a coincidence. But we've had warfare, we've had pandemics, and not just this recent one. We've had lots of pandemics in the past. We've had the Spanish flu in I think it was around 1920, wasn't it? And then we had the Black Death, which wiped out 3/4 of the world's population. People have died, and until recently, infant mortality rates were very, very high. And it's only in the past kind of few decades, really, where medical intervention and medical care has got better, that you know, those things have decreased. I wouldn't say they've stopped altogether, as the recent pandemic showed, but they've certainly decreased and allowed the population to kind of spring up from what it has been.
Yep, limited resources as well too. I mean, you got to think that throughout all human history, it's not that we've had you just kind of take for granted you just can go turn your faucet and get some water, right? And so, yeah, high infant mortality rates, disease, war, conflict, which is what Richard said. Limited resources, culture, social factors. It seems that you have all of that. But I mean, presumably you have a reason that you're asking the question. But that's the best I think that I could give you on that.
Yeah, I was gonna see Forrest, because I think Forrest was the one that was a evolutionary. But that
exactly.
Matter. But
well, I was gonna suggest Forrest. I was like, because I feel like this is gonna get into the biological type of evolution discussion quick, but.
I don't agree with that. 200, I mean, that would mean 347,000 years. Or I don't know, 340,000 years. We'd have to be in Africa, I think is where they say, in Ethiopia, where we didn't grow because there were so many plagues and so much famine.
I think one thing you're missing
very often in Africa.
RJ, I think one thing you're missing here.
There would have to be just millions of those incidents. So
RJ, let me just interject with this point real quick, and then I'll let you kind of respond to it. I think one of the things you're missing is until very, very recently we were hunter-gatherers, and for the largest proportion of that time, we were limited by resource. We were following herds around, and that's how we survived. We weren't in settlements. We weren't growing at all, and we were barely surviving, along with other species, by the way, that were around. And it took a long, long time for us to get down, settle down, and form these cities. And it wasn't until then that population started growing. So to say we've been around for all this time, but we've only just started growing, kind of ignores the fact that for the majority of that period, we were just hunter-gatherers. We were nomadic. We weren't settling down. We didn't have farming methods or anything like that. And that's really when we did first start to kind of explode in population.
Is it really that difficult to develop farming and to hunt animals? Is that really, really difficult task for a human being to develop?
Have you ever?
I feel like this whole thing is based on some incredulity here, and it appeals to ignorance, and it's not sounding like. Yeah, go ahead, Richard. Like,
I just really
I'm
want
very
to
skeptical that you're not being totally incredulous, because you haven't even mentioned the rate of population growth or anything like that. None of that mattered. So
I just kind of want to ask RJ if he's ever kind of been out in the wilderness. RJ, have you ever been out in the wilderness? Because I've been out in the wilderness. And it's really not comfortable. It's really not comfortable at all. And this is with modern technology and modern equipment. And It's I would say that it would be very, very hard from people in the past who were nomadic to actually set down and get that infrastructure in place where they can actually start to develop farming. It's not just a case that you can just sit down and decide to do it one day. You know, it takes a lot of things to actually.
There's deers that survive out in the wild, and they're not nearly as smart as humans, right? And they survive really easily. So saying the humans who are more intelligent than deer have a much really.
RJ, are you a serious caller?
In the wild. What?
Are you a serious caller?
Yeah, I'm absolutely serious. So explain to me how there's deers out there that they don't have the capability we have. There's lions, there's tigers. We're smarter than all of them. They can survive very easily out in the wild.
Look, I'm not a
You're telling me
biologist.
that we can't survive. That we have all kinds of, it's so difficult to develop farming.
I don't think deers and lions survive very, very easily. I think that's a falsity. I think you only have to watch a very basic wildlife documentary to see that things don't survive easily. It's a struggle. Life is a struggle.
We would also have more resources because humans are more sparsely spread out during that time period. And we would also have fewer plagues because we're more spread out.
Yeah, but what you're saying this, but like this sounds just like it sounds good in my head, or it sounds like it makes sense. But I even said there's evidence that this would be the case. And then so here's one thing: is you have a concern on whether or not you could reach 8 billion in the lifespan that you have, and you have concerns about that. If you're asking questions in that sense to understand, I understand that. But it's sounding like incredulity because just wait. It's sounding like incredulity because you're just like, well, how do you explain this or how do you do this? If you think it's impossible, then I mean that's gonna be on you, right? That's not because one, I'm not a biologist. You will have to call and talk to Forrest. This is way out of my wheelhouse. But it's hard for me to not think that this is incredulity or that you have, because I think that if you're honest with yourself, you think it's impossible, right? It's not merely that you're just questioning it. I have a feeling that you think that this couldn't occur, right? Am I right about that?
I would say mathematically speaking,
it couldn't occur, right?
Makes sense for us to only have 8 billion people after 300.
Then you would show mathematically that that's the case. Don't ask us questions and then invoke incredulity and ignorance. Right. If it's mathematically impossible, then do the derivation, right? Like I'm just not going to put up with like 20 questions all day if you think it's some type of mathematical issue and you're not even going to provide the fucking derivation. I can't take you seriously. I just can't. And I don't know shit about this.
It's not. I'm not. I mean, you can do this on a math. You can go from. I don't know.
It's your job. You're the one who is skeptical about it.
Times it by 2.
It's your job to do that. If you think it's statistically impossible or
I
improbable,
did do it.
then show the math. Okay, then I guess email me the math. I'd be interested. I'll forward the Forrest for you personally.
How can I do that through the phone? Show you the math.
Email. I'll give you an email right now.
Okay, I'll send you an email. But I mean,
be great. I'd love that.
Like it's really complicated. What I'm saying.
Hold on. We're not going to move from this. We're not going to move from this. TV. You have a paper down. You have paper. Do you have pen? Something.
I got a notepad on my phone, but
or just go back and listen to me say the words on the recording. TV@atheist-community.org. Email there. I'll give it straight to Forrest. We'll give it straight to Forrest.
Okay, hold on just a moment here. Hold on. Sorry.
I want to make sure we do take every nook and cranny for you because I'm not convinced in your mathematical derivation. And like I said, I don't know much about this, but I am convinced it won't be forthcoming.
Okay, well, I can tell you this. If you're going back 400,000 years, or some say 350,000 years, I mean, you would have to have a lot of dead people. You'd have to have lots of huge cataclysmic events, destroy half the population. Even in modern times, that hasn't happened. Even the Black Plague, like you said, the population sprung right back up from that. I mean, even the COVID-19 didn't kill the majority of our population.
RJ, I feel like Can I just ask you if the way you've worked out your math is to take a X population at the beginning and literally just double it every so many years without taking other factors into consideration?
Right. Well, see, I've taken other factors. It comes out to about doubling the population every 150 years, if I did it right, that to get to 8 billion. If you go back about 4,000 years.
Yeah, but did you
which
look
would make
at?
sense if you
did
look,
you look at
the?
Yeah, but did you look at like the population rates? Like, so I don't think and I could be wrong on this, but I'm pretty sure from what I remember, we didn't even hit like 1 billion until 1800, right? And so it doesn't sound like you're even taking in like any type of population rate here or looking at the data. It seems like you're just kind of stringing these things in your head that it doesn't make sense, but you don't really care about the actual individual factors or things that are at play. It just doesn't sound like an honest critique, and I don't know much about this, so maybe I'm wrong, but this just doesn't sound like an honest critique. It sounds like a motivated critique.
Yeah, that's the point I was going to get to. Let's just RJ, just for 1 second. Let's just assume that you're correct, and you know what we've said is crap, and everything you've just said is right. You know, there's something wrong. We should have more people than we have now. What is the kind of end of this argument? Where's it leading?
I would say this gives, and no, it's not 100% proof, but this gives a lot of leeway to the biblical story that we've only been here for about 4,000 to 6,000 years that humans have been around. That
Why?
This is not a
Why
really
does it do
old
that?
Earth. And see, you're talking about me assuming constants with the population growth. When they do the radiometric dating, they're also assuming constants between the carbon-14 and carbon-12. So you guys are doing the exact you're making assumptions.
I'll let Jmike take that one because
Well,
I've had about 2 days worth of carbon-14 conversations.
Yeah, I don't know. That's another forest thing to get into. But I mean, the fact that so many industries are dependent on this success rate and like billions of dollars within the industries that depend on this, I think we have some really good reason to back that up. Same with the other case. But look, I kind of want to just zoom out. You want to show this inconsistency from this rate and say that lends credit for that. Well, like even if we granted that it did, it wouldn't. I mean, there's other views that would take to an early Earth. I mean, I get what you're trying to do, but you're not tackling like the geological strata, right, or anything like that. You're just focused on this rate. I mean, it seems that you have different independent pieces of evidence that you could string together, make predictive success, right? Not just like, yeah, I don't understand how this works, and I'm going to call the Atheist Experience and see what they think about it. It seems like if you really thought that this was true, or you could show it was true, you would string these kinds of pieces like, hey, this population rate doesn't work out. I can make predictive success or predictive expectation based on this hypothesis, stringing all this data together. And if you get novel predictions out of that view, I'm not saying testable necessarily, I'm just saying you get some novel predictions or predictive expectation. I mean, that'd be great, but just calling and saying that like this doesn't make sense to me isn't really compelling to me, right? The thing I would want to see is some type of predictive expectation that comes true. And I don't even think you're anywhere close to that. And that's what you're competing against, right? You're competing against views that do that. So it's like really unfair for you to go, I see that you went through this rigorous process. I'm just going to like fucking sidestep that shit. Fuck that. I'm not dealing with that because that might show my shit's wrong. That's just how it comes off to me, I guess. I don't know. I'm not trying to say you do that dishonestly, but every time someone says this, they're not going through this rigorous process. They're like, oh, I don't get it. Okay. That's not an argument, nor is that predictive expectation. That's incredulity or ignorance. So I don't know. I'm kind of...
I guess we can agree to disagree, but I think...
Sure. I definitely agree to disagree.
I think that's my biggest criticism of evolution and atheism is that something just doesn't seem to be adding up here. And
what would it do? What would it do to your belief, RJ? What would it do to your belief if it was confirmed that kind of that we did have this these populations dying out, and we didn't start exploding until a certain time, what would you do if that evidence was presented to you? First of all, would you accept it if it was presented to you? Let's say you talked to Forrest and he gave you the sources that demonstrated this was the case. Would you accept it if it was demonstrated to you? And secondly, if you did accept it, what would it do to your kind of the worldview you have that Christianity is true and God exists?
Well, I've looked at a lot of the evidence online, and I don't really see what you're saying. But if he was somehow able to prove, I mean, I don't know how you would do that. You have to take like a camera back in time or something. But that we evolved from apes, yeah, I would probably question my religion. But when facts are there and the facts are more in favor of my belief, I have to tip my belief system over into Christianity. You know,
I mean, this is getting into a whole different area, and I'm not equipped to talk about biology, but I think when you're saying the evidence is there and it doesn't really convince you, when the amount of evidence that we do have for evolution,
endogenous retroviruses alone should
it suggests everybody. It suggests to me that you've either not actually looked into it as thoroughly as you claim to have done, or you've dismissed it out of hand.
Okay, well, yeah, I mean, like I said, I'll keep researching it, but I'm not convinced. I mean, I think there's something off here that I think a lot of atheists are missing and a lot of evolutionists are missing. So something does not add up in that.
Look up ERVs.
Years that they say we've been around.
Look up ERVs, endogenous retroviruses. Look up why that's really good evidence that humans and chimpanzees share common ancestry. Because if you get into, I think it's called the HERV W group, we share like 205 out of like 211 or 209. The probability exceeds the number of atoms that there are in the universe for them to have that exact same location. And so it'd be really interesting. I'm not a big biologist or anything like that, but I would suggest that's the thing. I mean, and I'm not saying, oh, just believe me. Go look at that. If you're not convinced by that, or you talk to some biologists, if that doesn't convince you, I don't know what will. I really don't.
I get what you're saying about our DNA being very close together. However, I've looked at that and say I have a Galaxy.
That's not necessarily what I'm saying.
Note 9.
That's not what I'm saying. I'm talking
about. I have a Galaxy tablet. They're not the same, but they'll have some.
No. Stop. That's not what I'm saying. I'm talking about retroviruses, right? This isn't just the DNA. It's in the segment of our DNA. It's like it kind of marks off this kind of scar that's passed through. It's like a scar for our ancestry. It's a really good data record for us to know. This isn't just about the similarities of our DNA. Look into endogenous retroviruses. We're going to move on, but I'm not interested in the really bad analogy that. Oh my God! And you're still talking, so we're gonna go ahead and drop you, RJ.
Okay, well, I'll go ahead and let you guys go. Okay.
Oh, I already let you go. See you, bud. All right. So yeah, I didn't know if Richard. It seemed like you wanted to take one more call. If we have time, right?
Yeah.
You wanted to take Tyler?
Yeah. Let's jump in with Tyler. Been waiting for a while.
Yeah, I think Tyler waited last show, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe he got on. I can't really remember. So apologies if so. But yeah, Tyler in Nebraska says that needs help building a strong case against Christianity. Okay. How's it going?
Hey, I'm doing well. Thanks so much, guys, for taking the call. Richard, I love you. Jmike, I love you. Axioms on China rocks, man.
Oh, thank you. Big love there.
Man, thank you. I did wait last time I didn't get on, so thanks very much for taking it now.
Sure.
I guess to keep it as brief as possible, and I have a fear that this might be frustrating for you guys. I have a fear of hell that I guess is probably unwarranted. At least that's what you guys will say. And I guess because I have ADHD, or I don't feel like I have it in me to go the Bart Ehrman route and get a degree in any of this stuff. I was just hoping that you guys maybe might have some quick go-tos, for lack of a better word, that I could go and look to and kind of at the very least get some peace about some of the Christian claims, I guess.
For yourself. Is this for
yeah.
yourself, or is it to form an argument against someone else? Because if it's for yourself, I think this is really easy to do.
Yeah, I get that impression too. It's mostly for myself, I'd say. So I said at the very least, I'd like to get some peace for myself. But I mean, I've got a whole. My mom's entire side of the family are devoted traditionalist Roman Catholic theocrats. God bless them. And so it might be the case that if I figured out that they don't believe what they do on very solid grounds, that maybe there's not much of a hope for helping them out. But just at the very least, I guess, yeah, I just like to get some peace of mind.
Yeah, I think just simply looking at the development of hell from the Christian perspective, the kind of general Christian perspective, obviously without knowing specifically which variant you believe in. I've got to talk generally, but in the Christian Bible as a whole, there are 4 different words used for hell, and you can actually trace the development of the hell concept. And those words are Sheol, which is a Hebrew word, and originally referred to the permanent abode of the dead. But in the kind of Second Temple period, that definition actually began to change. So Sheol started to become then the place where wrongdoers went until the day of judgment. And that was one word for hell used. Another word for hell used in the Bible is Hades. And Hades was both an actual god, but it was benevolent rather than like an evil god. And it was also the name of the underworld in Greek mythology. And as a realm, it's kind of considered to have different parts to it, but it's generally considered to kind of misstay, and all people, good and bad, go there when they die. And again, this was later kind of amalgamated and mixed into with the previously mentioned Sheol. So in many cases, those two names became interchangeable, and you can trace that timeline. Another word for hell in the Bible is Tartarus. And again, that was both a realm and a god from Greek mythology. It was a prison for the Titans, and it was where wrongdoers were sent to receive divine punishment. And the final word for hell in the Bible is Gehenna. And that was an actual physical valley. It was a real place in Jerusalem where some of the Judean kings were said to have sacrificed the children by fire. And obviously that's where the hell kind of bit comes in, the fire bit. And so it was thought to be cursed. And as a result of this, it's kind of thought that this is why it later became associated as a destination for the dead, as a purgatory in kind of Catholicism, and as a general holding place for all the departed. So all these different words got amalgamated, and we can kind of trace the timeline of them. And that is kind of where the idea of hell comes from. There are plenty of good books on this subject if you kind of want to search them out and things. But that's kind of a general overview. But it's just a case for yourself of going, kind of looking at that work that's already been done for you and just tracing that timeline, because you can specifically pick out like periods like the Second Temple period, where things began to change, where the ideas of these places began to change and take on new meaning and become amalgamated with the other words to have eventually the place that's behind me right now, the kind of modern kind of vision of what we think hell is. And obviously there were later writers like Dante and things which informed things like that, but I mean, I'm going back to the kind of original words that are used in the Bible here.
Yeah, there's some good sources. There's a really good one if you just like kind of walk around the house. I think it's on archive.org, but it's one of Ehrman's courses on the historical Jesus, and it goes through one of the sections goes through the intertestamental period and how Jewish concepts just begin to change. One of the things that really stuck out there for me is looking at like the Persian influences on the types of like angel, demon warfare. You get the Hellenization and what Richard's already kind of touched on. That if you look in that, I mean, I didn't have a fear of hell, so this is a question that I always feel like I can't answer for somebody. I always feel like, well, I never had this kind of fear, so I feel disingenuous. The only perspective I can give is that when I looked through all of this, it was clear cut for me. Like I saw how the development of hell came, how the development of different concepts in the intertestamental period played out. And that it shifted my view on Jesus. For the New Testament, it's just a completely different shift from prior to having exposed myself to that. So I don't know if that will help you because, like I said, I don't have the attachment of the fear of hell part. So maybe it was, just intuitively easier for me to go, oh, okay, I see this Sunday school version, versus like the scholar version. But if that makes sense. So there might be a bigger block for you there because of how dedicated you were and, things like that.
That, of course, what you guys both said is very helpful. Thanks very much for that. I guess more or less, that's why I said I hope this wouldn't be too frustrating for you guys because I am an agnostic atheist, but sure. I guess it just may be the case that I need to get off my duff and look into the stuff. But this history just bores me to no end, unfortunately.
Yeah, I was going to say it might be boring, man, but like Dr. James Tabor is a really good source, scholar, I believe Old Testament scholar. Paula Fredrickson, Bart Ehrman, Mark Goodacre. There's some really good ones out there. Buddy of mine, Derek, has a lot of those on his channel, Myth Vision, and so they have a lot of scholars and stuff. That if that helps, kind of take the boredom out, because I get that. It would be helpful. It's just it's so hard for me to like touch on this because I didn't have this fear, and I feel like I'm just being dishonest in a way where I'm like, oh, I can help you. It's like I know I can't. So like I know that I can say words, and then you're gonna have to do stuff. Beyond that,
I knew more. I knew more or less what I was coming into with this. I just thought if you guys could get, who better to ask than you guys to give me the shortcuts to some of this stuff,
Well, I appreciate it. I mean, if you want to, email us or anything like that, I'd like. I got to do better at being on that and responding, but I'd like for anybody that wants a kind of correspondence back and forth. I want to dedicate a time out of my day to do that, and so I'd love to kind of go back and forth on that and see where you progress, or because it helps me kind of understand that perspective, and then it's nice to have a follow up and know that like someone, hey, I was a theist, I'm no longer a theist anymore, or I'm a theist, I have this argument, I'm going to pummel you with it, or however it will end up going, but it'd be good and not just to have one.
I appreciate that. I will definitely take you up on that. Thank you so much, guys.
Sure.
Yeah. Thank you, Tyler.
Of course. Thanks. Take care, guys.
Yep. And then we're going to try to do one more before we go. We're a little over, I think. But it's left up here for me. So I'm going to take that as a go. And it's another theist. So we'll end on a theist call. Alex, pronouns are he, him, in California, wants to discuss atheists' need for irrefutable evidence for God. Okay.
Hello, guys. How are you doing?
Good.
Yeah. How are you?
Cool. Well, so I've been watching the show kind of off and on. I've also spoken with many an atheist, and I've noticed a common thread. The bottom line argument that most, hold on, excuse me. Pardon me if I sound nervous, it's because I am.
Oh, it's all good. No worries.
I'll calm down as the conversation progresses. So this common thread I've noticed, most, if not all atheists say they need to have irrefutable proof for God before they'll believe in God. And the Bible is rejected. Things like miracles are rejected. People's testimonies are rejected. And so I'm wondering, what kind of evidence would be satisfactory for you, perhaps the common atheist? And then once you answer that, I want to make a claim, but I'll let you answer first.
Novel predictions or a deductive argument, I guess. But I mean, I'm kind of skeptical that I'm going to produce a deductive argument that God doesn't exist and convince the theist. And similarly, I think that they're probably not going to. One of the premises we're probably just going to say, hey, I already have a worldview that denies that premise being true, so it's not really going to convince me. So that's one way, maybe. And then the other one, I stress kind of three ways. A worldview comparison, which I think we would just have to assess the data in terms of like, maybe we both agree there's fine tuning, or we both agree there's conscious agents, or that the universe began to exist, or whatever. And we assess the view there and see which one is simpler, meaning has less commitments and explains all the data. So I have a lot of different avenues that I can go. It's pretty much just like inductive, abductive, deductive kind of routes.
Yeah, and I kind of, I don't know, the way you phrased the thing, that atheists will only accept irrefutable proof.
Yeah, I don't get that.
To begin with, that, I mean, I don't know what really even know what you mean by that, because I would accept anything, any kind of evidence or proof that to kind of separate for the kind of scientific method and the philosophical realm. But I would accept any which demonstrates the claim to be true. And yeah, I don't really know what you mean by irrefutable in that respect. And the thing is, again, with you saying things like, things like miracles are dismissed. Miracles are dismissed because they need evidence to support themselves. We had a call earlier on talking about miracles, and miracles can be anything from kind of mundane things, which are mathematical miracles, which are just statistical, to kind of, if you have a look at the miracle claims in the Bible, they're kind of split into different categories. And when you really, really break them down, not many of them can be classed as supernatural miracles. There are things that are highly unlikely, like Sarah having a child at 90 years old. There are things that can be reproduced by magicians, like turning water into wine or walking on water. These things can be reduced. It can be reproduced using other methods. So to even make them kind of to demonstrate that the supernatural miracles is a job and a half in itself. And then you've got this other whole section of claims being made that we need to kind of really, really break apart. It's not just a case of saying, I mean, like things like personal testimony. It's not that personal testimony in and of itself is rejected as a methodology. It's that kind of, given the claims, if we take the resurrection account, for example, and we're often told, oh, we've got personal testimony, we've got this, that, and the other. But actually we don't have, because if we really break down what we've got in the gospel accounts, that's more like a newspaper report of somebody else's witnessing something. Because the other, if we take some of the accounts and it says there's only Mary Magdalene there, but this is somebody reporting that. This isn't Mary Magdalene writing. And so we've got to see them for what they are. So it's not actually personal testimony we're dealing with in a lot of these cases when we're told that it is. So we really have to break all those things down and assess them on their own merits.
Okay. So I was referring to personal testimony. Somebody in person, and that person says, oh, God saved me from this, or God answered my prayers this way. My grandmother was healed, therefore that's a miracle. I've heard many atheists say, okay, that's great, but how can that doesn't do it for me to prove that God is real.
How would you demonstrate that's the case, though? And let me take the atheist out of the argument completely for you. And let's say that we have a Christian who says, my grandmother was healed. healed by God, and that proves that God exists for me. That is evidence of a miracle. And then we have a Muslim who says, my grandmother was healed, and that's evidence that my God is real. And then we have a Buddhist and says that my grandmother was healed, and that's evidence that the Dharma is real and that miracles can occur through supernatural events in Buddhism. So how would we ascertain which one of those is right? See, if we're only using personal evidence, a person speaking as the criteria of that as being true, then we've already got a massive problem, because we've got 3 identical claims claiming exactly the same thing. So if we're going to take personal testimony itself as the yardstick, as the evidence, then in this situation, we have no evidence. We've got nothing that shows that one is more likely than the other.
And this is why predictive expectation really matters, because if you have 3 views that are all equal and nothing separates themselves, one can have right? If you have a hypothesis, 3 hypotheses that explain all the same data, but yours makes a predictive expectation that's right, you win, right? You're the one who has evidence for your claim. If it's not successful with the other ones, that's not a good explanation. And so that's why I want to harp on the novel predictions or predictive success, because in the case like Richard gave, that's going to be one of the ways to separate one of the views that's likely to be true over the other one. So we're not saying it needs to be proof, but that's what we mean by evidence. That's why we have evidence of like the Big Bang, because we predicted atomic light nuclei or a ratio of helium and hydrogen, right? And so if those things come true, or they fit the model or the hypothesis that other ones don't, like the steady state, we have reason to abandon the steady state in favor of a new model. I mean, that's really all it comes down to for me. I'm happy to move to the other side if I have the same type of criteria that I use for everything else.
Okay, I want to respond to what you just said, but first I want to say, respond to what the Richard Gilliver. I want to respond to what you said about the 3 hypothetical situations. I don't see those as common things. I've never heard about anybody. Well, let me ask you, how often do you hear about Buddhists praying to whomever or Hindus praying to whomever and then they're healed?
I hear about it quite a lot because I interact with Muslims and Buddhists quite regularly.
And crystal clutchers.
I've been invited to mosques for Eid meals. I've stayed at Buddhist temples. So I interact with these people as much, if not more, than Christians. So these claims are claims that I do hear. This isn't just me just making shit up. This is stuff I hear on a regular basis.
And somewhere Kelly right now is just like jumping. Like, you know how many people, how many crystal woo-woo people I've talked to, it says that their grandmother was healed by crystals, right? So this happens all the time. By the way, healing, this isn't even like a miracle event, because I can ask anybody in the audience, right? Have you had an event or have you and someone in your family or someone you know had something where they shouldn't have lived, but they lived? The doctors told them they shouldn't have lived. I think literally everybody has that experience in their family. It doesn't sound like it's a great thing. I'm glad that happened, but it doesn't sound so miraculous since fucking everybody goes through it. Like, it's happened to me in my life. My dad died 3 times. My dad has a pacemaker, right? My dad's had some health issues, and thankfully he's come back from those. But I mean, if I just say, thank God, it's science and that's it. I mean, I can make that move, but hopefully there's, someone's adding more to that there's a God or there's other entities. That's not up to me, because we agree that there's science. We agree there's a science of a medicine. We agree that there's all these things that we already agree with. You're adding more metaphysical salt and pepper than I am. I don't need to explain the data. It's like the common theme is I don't need to add this stuff to explain the data.
And that's exactly why we need to take kind of statistical views of very large numbers into account when assessing these claims, because in a lot of cases, this is the case. Even with claimed biblical miracles, this is very often the case. We've got alternatives to the supernatural that we know happen.
Okay, so I think the healing argument is maybe a little bit tired. It's not like what I would want to focus on as far as miracles, because I agree it's pretty easy to say, oh, that was medicine, that was this, that, and the other. So what about things that are much more nuanced? Like, let me just briefly tell you a miracle that I experienced, because there's no other way it can be possible. So I was driving a long distance one day. I had to get to a place that was 2 hours away. I misjudged how far the gas station was before leaving town, and I had just about an empty gas tank. On my gauge, it shows me, like in numbers, how many miles I have left, and it counts down all the way to 0. I misjudged the gas station distance, and I thought I'll get the next one. I didn't realize that it was 30 miles away, and I had less than 20 miles left on my gauge. So I prayed. I had faith in God. I trusted that he was going to get me there, make the impossible happen. And I watched my gauge go down to 0. And for the next 25 miles, I drove on an empty tank until I got to the gas station, filled it up. And I think that is supernatural. It's an impossibility in reality, or in like scientific terms. How does something like that?
We aren't there, Alex, so we don't know. We can't investigate that, right? But the one thing to say is that, I mean, how much of that could be due to your ignorance of how much of an actual tank? Because like I was driving on E. I just bought a new car for my brother, and I was on E, and I was like, oh crap! I had to like sit there and go, I don't know how much, I have until my tank runs out. And I get to the gas station, I put the gas in, I go, I need to know for the future, like how much does this car? It was like 100. It said it would go like 60 to 100 miles or something on E for me, which I was not expecting at all. It was like, I think it was like 60 miles.
And something
so I just don't know how much of this is just due to potential ignorance of how your car operates. Right? I don't see anything significant on why this would be God.
Yeah, and something you said, Alex, really kind of struck me there, because you said there is no other explanation. It has to be a miracle. And yet we know that car instruments can fail. We know that car instruments don't always register what they appear to be registering. These are things that we know happen.
Especially if it's like the little bobber thing for the gas, right? Because that's outdated. And mine tells me it's empty. I'll get in the car and I'm like, oh crap, I got gas. Then I'm like, no, I'm empty. You lied.
I mean, my car probably works completely different to yours do anyway, because it's probably be about 1/10 of the size of your huge American gas guzzling things that you have.
I got a Camry, so it's not too big.
But in all seriousness, Alex, why would you determine that there is no other possible explanation other than a miracle for that event?
I think it makes sense to say, I saw one thing, I prayed about it, and then I saw the results. And that
didn't particularly answer the question I've just asked, though.
Right.
The question I asked was, how would you kind of assess that is the only possible explanation?
Well, the only possible explanation, because what would be the alternative? If my instruments fail me and I have to trust
your ignorance of the situation, or the fact that
we've literally just presented at least 3 alternative scenarios to you that it could have been. We know happened.
I delivered pizzas for like 7 years. You know how many times I drove on E? It was like barely had money to get to there. I'm begging that these people give me a tip so I can start stacking up some money, and I end up getting there back 4 different deliveries. I just don't see, like, I would, even if I was said thank God or praise God or praise naturalism. Hopefully naturalism is true. I just don't see the connection.
I now know where Jmike's pizza obsession comes from.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Send your pizzas to. No, I'm just kidding. No, but Alex, I mean, do you see what he's saying though? Like in terms, because I want to get back to Richard's point before I guess we move on. Is that he's wanting to know if it's possible, right? That could be explained and it not be a miracle. And I feel like we should say yes to that. I feel like you should say. I mean, I'm not going to tell you what you need to say, but I mean, is it out of the cards that the instruments were displaying the wrong, gauge, and that you thought you had more gas, or you didn't know that it could actually had a tank reservoir that you could actually get more gas out of, right? I don't really. Is that possible? Because I'm not seeing why that wouldn't be. It seems like a very Seems like things people do every day. They're like, oh, I didn't know I had that much gas. I was wrong. Not like, oh, therefore God exists.
Hang on. Would you mind repeating that last part again?
Well, yeah, is it possible for, I guess Richard's question is it possible that it could be anything else?
Well, of course it's possible. I'm not discounting that there are other things that can be at play.
But you literally did. You literally stated that it was impossible that it could be anything other than a miracle.
Okay, so let me return that to you. Why does it always have to be something other than a miracle? So why is miracle not also in the cards?
Because we have no demonstration that a supernatural miracle can occur. And this is the problem. Yeah, we've got alternatives to a miracle. Your own miracle experience, we've just presented alternatives to you, which after saying it was impossible that it could be anything else, you acknowledged, in fact, could be something else.
Okay, so maybe my personal examples are easily picked apart, but I've heard of other testimonies from people who've experienced things that are
sure, and
far more.
You've heard other people from other religions to have testimonies too, right?
Yeah, that's a different topic. I feel like there's.
But it's not though. It's not though. It's not though, because you're look. The reason why you prayed instead of didn't beg a law to not like end up getting in an accident and going to Jahannam or something, right? The reason why you didn't do that or pray to Allah or pray to Vishnu is because you already have these beliefs. And you're talking about people who get into similar situations like you that pray to their deity, and then the outcome is achieved. And so by your lights, they have just as good evidence to conclude that Allah exists. But that wouldn't be good for you, because then we've contradicted the fact that we think Yahweh exists based off the same reasoning. And so now what we're doing is we're pointing out that this isn't good enough. They both can get us to different conclusions. We need to add more. My suggestion was novel predictions. But miracle events, it's not my problem that they're divorced from that. Like if someone wants to create something that's hard to falsify or verify, like that's not my problem. Like have a better analysis on it and how we can actually be reasonable in assuming justification there. But it's not really my problem that, something is defined in such a way that's hard to verify.
Do you think, Alex, that God wants us to believe that he exists?
Of course.
So why doesn't he make it easier for us to do that instead of giving us these really, really vague kind of scenarios which could possibly, and I think I'm being generous by saying that, be a supernatural miracle and have mundane alternative explanations? I mean, biblically speaking, he could directly place knowledge of his existence into our hearts without overriding our free will. So there's literally nothing from a theological point of view. If God wants us to believe in him, just making us all believe in him, and then we would have the choice of whether we chose to follow him or not, which is the important part of theology. Not that we believe in him. And there's plenty of characters in the Bible that believed in God but didn't choose to follow him. So it seems like he's going to, if he wants us to believe in him, it seems like he's going a really, really long way round to kind of get that action done. It seems that either he is incapable of doing it, or he doesn't want to do it. Yeah, and that's if he exists to begin with.
Which is strange, because he wants to help you with gas, but he doesn't want to help, some people's parents who are praying for their child with leukemia to survive. But it's very convenient that it also, to me, it seems it's got to speak to the character of what you think is loving and true. This might be a separate point, that if he's really invested in proving to you just by getting you somewhere because of gas, but he'll let an infant die. Yeah, I mean, this just sounds like the hallmark of chance and that shitty things happen. And that's what you expect in a naturalistic type of world. The universe doesn't have feelings about you. It doesn't care. It doesn't even possess the ability to. And so you're going to get these types of outcomes. But Yeah, I don't know. It seems strange because I know if I was happy that I got somewhere and I thought that was evidence of God, and then my friend called me up and said I prayed all day and Johnny didn't make it. All right, we have to do a funeral and we have all this. I'd feel very weird about how successful that prediction was for me, right?
Well,
So
the
I don't
answer
know.
to that is because the answer isn't always yes. So just because you pray for something doesn't mean you're going to get that thing. And
Great.
Christians are aware of that. I have many prayers that have been answered no or wait. So it doesn't mean that it's 100%.
Does an all loving
for what you
being
want.
does a loving being tier gas mileage over baby killing? Because like if that's the case and you want to have a constitutive notion of goodness there, we're just way off the fucking map. We probably will never have like any clear understanding of each other's opinion, because that's insane to me. But I mean, we're running up on time, so I want to give you a time to kind of close out, Richard. But I want to make sure we kind of, because we're way over time. But yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Okay. Next, I want to call back when we have more time, so we can actually have a lengthier.
That'd be awesome.
But
yeah.
No, Alex, that'd be great. But I want you to, feel free to say your piece and everything you want to say, because I don't want to just cut you off and then end the show.
Right. So, just lost my train of thought. So you were saying,
sorry, my bad.
God allow very evil things, and then allow seemingly nonsensical things like gas. But the reality of the world is that we live in a fallen world. It's sinful. People will commit crimes against God and other people. And God just doesn't just jump in and stop everything that's wrong. There's an entire process to it, which unfolds over long periods of time. And I think you guys already know that. When you look at the Bible, you see how there are, like, God is patient, plays the long game, because we...
Yeah, he watches somebody get raped and then he punishes them later. We get that. That's why we think it's like despicable and not indicative of an all-loving being. Because if a loving being had at least one character, it would at least be stopping one instance. But it doesn't even stop one. It lets all of them go. I think it's all punish you later, right? It's not a really good thing from my eyes. But two, God already knew that the fall was going to happen. Right, he's omniscient. He knows it's going to occur. It's not that he's going to get tripped up by two naked people right on his way to creating the universe. Like, that's not what's going to happen to an omnipotent being who knows it's going to happen ahead of time. He's not going to be like, oh, those meddling kids again, and they're eating of the fruit. He knows that, and he goes ahead with it anyway. So presumably God has reasons to allow evil, and then that doesn't even seem clear to me that there's even evil in your worldview. It seems that all things considered, that things should occur, that there should be evil. That's why God went ahead with it, rather than creating a world where we freely do good like he does, right? So, I mean, we can touch on this more. If you want to go on the problem of evil, it's one of my favorite things to talk about. But in terms of the evidence and the stuff with the miracles and all that stuff, I'm not really seeing how you've provided evidence that goes against the possibilities that Richard has kind of teased out to show that those are possibilities. It seems that both of those are on like an epistemic par, right? They're equivalent with each other. I would say the naturalist view probably works better in the sense that at least we know that there's, the universe and natural things, but it's a separate,
Right. I didn't think to say that, but stuff like, the natural world, the universe, and those things, and the fact that the Bible exists, many will say that's evidence enough. And there are those who say that's not evidence. And that's the point. I wanted to focus more on that, and we rabbit trailed off onto these other topics. But
yeah, apologies. I mean, that might have been my fault. I apologize if that's the case. But yeah, Alex, I mean, if you want to call in, like, I don't know when I'm on next or whatever. I'd suggest to call any of the hosts, but we'd love to have you on for that. But I'd love to continue this conversation with you, because maybe we can get not rabbit trail and get to your concern better next time. So apologies if we didn't address that.
Yeah, I think we can find some common ground. Just got to stay more on topic.
Sure. Yeah, that's totally understandable. All right. Well, thank you, Alex. We appreciate the call, and hopefully we'll hear from you in the future. We're going to close it out, but I want to just make sure, in case I did not mention this already, that if you happen to be in the Austin area on April 30th, this year to 2023, not next year, obviously, we'll be broadcasting live from the Free Thought Library. So join us for Talk Heathen, hosted by Objectively Dan, and says special guest Blind Limey. And I hope that Limey, I say that right? Blind Limey? I think it is.
Yeah.
Just want to make sure it's Blind Limey. Yeah, Blind Limey. Got to say that 10 times. Showed up on audition day and did an excellent job. And so we're looking forward to the 30th. And Atheist Experience will be hosted by Jim Barrows and Christy Powell. So doors open at noon, and we hope to see you there. And no, I am not Christy Powell. Stop asking me. We are different people. Okay? We are totally different people. But anyway, also, if you have enjoyed this show, or if you've asked yourself, I like this, but I'd like to continue watching the content. Well, one, you can just check out our archive and do like an on-demand thing. But also, we have a brand new 24/7 AXP TV live stream. And so 24 hours a day, we will be streaming there. A bunch of clips and shows from hosts you may know, hosts you may not know. And that stretches back. I was watching one the other day. It was like, I think it went to it was just audio, but it was like 1998 or something. I was just like, wow, it's just crazy.
I love those audio only ones. I think
yeah,
they're great. It's
cool. And it gives you this kind of, you kind of see how the arguments and conversations haven't really shifted all too much in terms of the theists giving arguments. But
the old episodes transferred from videotapes, they're good as well.
Yeah. That's what I remember growing up, where because my buddy had just ripped VHS tapes from the cable access show, and that was. But anyway, I'll look like a fanboy here. So anyway, we have questions of the week reminder. So if you saw the beginning of the show, the question was: name a sin that is so minor that God can't be bothered to punish people. So enter your comment or your answer into the comment section below, and if it sparks the interest of the people here, we will read it, the top 3 answers next week. I want to give a shout out before we go quick to the crew. If we can put the crew up again one more time, that'd be awesome. Let's see that. There we go. Woo! It's always good to see that crew. All right, now I'm done. I'm enough with them. They get too much. It's too much. No, I'm just kidding. We love the crew. So thank you, everybody. Richard, I mean, what's up with you? I don't want to just skip you. So what do you have going on before we sign off?
Talk Heathen, obviously, the non-profits. I've done the triple today. I've done Talk Heathen,
that's right,
the non-profits, and the Atheist Experience, which has been tremendous fun. I've also got a show on the Atheist Community of Austin's TikTok channel on a Tuesday between 3 and 5 Central Time.
Yes.
Which we do every week, every single Tuesday, where it's kind of like this. But the guests come up and we have conversations with them, but there's no time limit, so it's as long as I feel like talking to each individual. So yeah, it's great fun. So if you're on TikTok, go and check that out on a Tuesday between 3 and 5 Central Time by following the Atheist Community of Austin.
Yep. Yeah. Check us out on TikTok. You can check us out on the website. So if you want any more information, atheist-community.org. That'll have a lot of the latest happenings. And you can also contact us at tv@atheist-community.org. And if you have any questions, or I want to try to do better and follow up on stuff. I've been terrible with emails and text messages with people. So I'm making a promise to my family, friends, and maybe viewers to be better at that. So hopefully if you email there, we can have a little bit back and forth, theist or atheist. Would be great. But it's been great, everybody. We appreciate it. We love you, and have a good day.
What will it take for you to start opening your eyes, to start questioning the bullshit everyone around you buys? You think it's any of your business what goes on between my thighs? I wonder when we'll be rid of your lies.
Watch Talk Heathen live Sundays at 1 p.m. Central. Visit tiny.cc/YTTH and call into the show at 512-991-9242 or connect to the show online at tiny.cc/callth.